Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, the correct sequence of taxonomic categories is option number 1, division, class, family, order, genus, species. Option number 2, division, class, order, family, genus, species. Option number 3, phylum, order, class, family, genus, species. And option number 4, class, phylum, order, family, genus, species. So which option here is the correct one? Now student, here we are talking about the taxonomic categories. So we can show that taxonomic categories showing hierarchical arrangement in ascending order. We know that student, taxonomic category showing hierarchical arrangement in ascending order. We know that species is the lowest category while kingdom is the highest category. So started with the species student, species which is the lowest category. So species which is the lowest category, then genus, then family, then order, then class, then division, or phylum. And we know that kingdom is the highest category, kingdom. So that is the correct taxonomic category showing the hierarchical arrangement in the ascending order, whereas kingdom is the highest category and species is the lowest category. And the reference of this question student comes from the NCERT page number 10. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 10, and here we are talking about the taxonomic categories showing hierarchical arrangement in ascending order. Here it is mentioned. So student, here it is mentioned that species is the lowest category, then genus, family, order, class, phylum or division, and last of all kingdom, which is the highest category. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer student, it is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, select the correct statement with respect to kingdom fungi. A, show diversity in habitat. B, loose tissue level body organization. C, complete absence of polysaccharide cell wall. D, includes prokaryotes and eukaryotes. E, diversity in morphology of mycelium. Here the options are A, B and E. Option number 2, A, C and D. Option number 3, B and D. And option number 4, A and B. So which option here is the correct one if we are talking about the kingdom fungi? So student, here we have talking about the kingdom fungi, and we have to select the correct statement student. Show diversity in habitat, that is the characteristics of the kingdom fungi, that they have the diversity in their habitat. Loose tissue level of body organization, it is also the characteristics of the kingdom fungi, that they have the loose body organization, loose tissue level body organization. Option C, complete absence of polysaccharide cell wall. Here it is incorrect student, because we know that cell wall of fungi consist of chitin and polysaccharide. And here it is mentioned that complete absence of polysaccharide cell wall, but the cell wall of fungi is consist of it is consist of chitin and polysaccharide. That's why C is incorrect. D, includes prokaryotes and eukaryotes. This is also incorrect because fungi doesn't include prokaryotes. That's why it is incorrect, student. E, diversity in morphology of mycelium. That is also the characteristics of the fungi. So student, A, B and E is the characteristics or the correct statement with respect to kingdom fungi. And the reference of this question, student, come from NCERT page number 22 and 23. So student, here we are talking about kingdom fungi on page number 22 of NCERT, and here it is mentioned that they show a great diversity in morphology and habitat. Here it is mentioned. And coming to the next point, student, if we come to the next point, here it is also mentioned that the morphology of mycelium, mode of spore formation and fruiting bodies form the basis for the division of the kingdom fungi into various classes. Here it is mentioned, and coming to the 22 number of the page, it is also mentioned, student, that cell wall of fungi, it is made up of, here it is mentioned, if coming to upper, here it is mentioned that the cell wall is made up of polysaccharide. Here it is mentioned the cell wall of fungi are composed of chitin and polysaccharide. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, here we find the correct answer, student, it is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, in gymnosperm ovule, option number 1 is not enclosed before fertilization but enclosed after fertilization. Option number 2 remains enclosed before fertilization only. Option number 3 is not enclosed by any ovary wall and remain exposed both before and after fertilization. D4 is never formed. So which option here is the correct one, student, if you are talking about the ovule in gymnosperm? We know that, student, in gymnosperms, the ovules are not enclosed by any ovary wall and remains exposed both before and after fertilization. Clear, student? And the reference of this question, student, it comes from the NCERT page number 38. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 38 of topic gymnosperms, and here it is clearly mentioned in gymnosperms that the gymnosperms, gymnos means necked, sperma means seeds, are plants in which the ovules are not enclosed by any ovary walls and remains exposed both before and after fertilization. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, here we find the correct answer, student, it is option number 3. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, in which of the following pair of plants the male and female gametophytes do not have an independent free living existence? Here the options are option number 1 Cycas pinus, option number 2 Marchantia cycas, option number 3 Salvinia funaria, option number 4 Sphagnum dryopteris. So which option here is the correct one? We know that, student, in unlike bryophyte and pteridophytes, unlike bryophytes and pteridophytes, in gymnosperms the male and female gametophyte do not have an independent free living existence. Example, Cycas pinus, both are gymnosperms. And the reference of this question, student, it comes from the NCERT page number 39. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 39, and here it is clearly mentioned that unlike bryophytes and pteridophytes, in gymnosperms, the male and the female gametophytes do not have an independent free living existence. Here it is mentioned, example of gymnosperm, Cycas pinus gingu. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question. Here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which one is wrong in respect to bryophytes? Here option number 1, water is essential for sexual reproduction. Option number 2, the presence of antheridium. Option number 3, the presence of ciliated sperms. And option number 4, the presence of autotrophic independent sporophytes. So which option here is the correct one? If we come to the option number 1, we know that student, bryophytes are called the amphibians of the plant kingdom, and hence the water is essential for the sexual reproduction. Option number 1 here is the correct one. And we know that the presence of antheridium, it is presence, so option number 2 is also being the incorrect one. And the presence of ciliated sperms, in bryophyte the sperms should be ciliated, this is also correct one. But here the option number 4 is incorrect, because here it is mentioned the presence of autotrophic independent sporophyte. But we know that student, the sporophyte in bryophyte, if we are talking about a sporophyte of the bryophyte, where the sporophyte in bryophyte is not free living, but are dependent on photosynthetic gametophytes and derive nourishment from it. And the reference of this question, student, comes from the NCERT page number 35. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 35, and here it is mentioned that the sporophyte is not free living but attached to photosynthetic gametophyte and derive nourishment from it. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question. Here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, in a flower, when a valve, sepal or petal touch each other at margins without overlapping, such flower is of option number 1, cassia, option number 2, lady's finger, option number 3, peas, and option number 4, calotropis. So which is the correct one? We know that, student, it is valvate estivation. Such type of the arrangement of the flower, it is called valvate estivation. as we know from the definition of the velvet estivation, we know that when a sepal or petal, in a wall just touch one another at margins without overlapping each other. It is called velvet estivation. And an example of velvet estivation, student, it is calotropis. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 74. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 74, and here we are talking about the estivation, and we are talking about the velvet estivation. And here it is defined that when sepal or petals in a wall just touch one another at the margin without overlapping, as in calotropis, it is said to be velvet estivation. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student, it is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is: the mature seeds of plants such as gram and peas possess no endosperm because option number 1, these plants are not angiosperms. Option number 2, there is no double fertilization in them. Option number 3, endosperm is not formed in them. And option number 4, endosperm gets used up by the developing embryo during seed development. So which is the correct one? Student, here we are talking about gram and peas. We are talking about gram and peas. And we know that, student, in grams and peas, the seed, it is non-albuminous. And we know that, student, in non-albuminous seeds, there is no residual endosperm as it is completely consumed during embryo development. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 36. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 36, and here it is mentioned, student, that non-albuminous seeds have no residual endosperm as it is completely consumed during embryo development. Example, pea, groundnut. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student, it is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is: early wood, option number 1, possesses narrow vessels. Option number 2 is light colored with low density. Option number 3 is darker with high density. And option number 4, possesses vessels with wider cavities and higher density. So which option here is the correct one if we are talking about the early wood? We know that, student, early wood is also called spring wood. So early wood, which is also called spring wood, is lighter in color and lower density while autumn wood is darker in color and higher density. And the reference of this question comes, student, it come from the NCERT page number 96. And here it is clearly mentioned, student, that the spring wood is lighter in color and has a lower density, whereas the autumn wood is darker and has a higher density. It is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, some cells are left behind from the shoot apical meristem while stem elongates and they constitute with respect to given diagram. Here a diagram is given in the question and that diagram is labeled as A, B, C, D. We have to identify the parts with their function. Now option number 1, axillary bud labeled A that develop into leaf. Option 2, axillary bud labeled C that give rise to branch. Option 3, terminal bud labeled B give rise to branch, and option 4, lateral meristem labeled D that give rise to branch. So which option here is the correct one? So before go to the solution, we have to first label the parts A, B, C, D. So student, A here it is mentioned to leaf primordium. A is labeled, it is leaf primordium. And if you are talking about the B will represent the shoot apical meristematic zone. And C will represent the axillary bud. And D will represent the differentiating vascular tissue. It will represent differentiating vascular tissue. Now student, come to the option number 1, axillary bud labeled A. Axillary bud labeled A. Here A is labeled with leaf primordium. That's why option number 1 is incorrect. Option 2, axillary bud labeled C. We know that student here C is labeled, it is labeled with axillary bud as mentioned here, and that axillary bud give rise to branch. So student, here option number 2 is the correct one. Option 3, terminal bud labeled B. Here terminal bud labeled B mentioned, but B is not terminal bud, B is shoot apical meristematic zone. That's why option 3 is also being incorrect, student. Option 4, lateral meristem labeled D, but here we know that student, lateral meristem which is labeled as D, but D is not lateral meristem, it is differentiating vascular tissue. That's why option 4 is also incorrect. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 85. Here it is mentioned that apical meristem, A is the root and B is the shoot. So student, here it is mentioned A is leaf primordium, and next it is shoot apical meristematic zone, next C axillary bud, D differentiating vascular tissue. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, lipids are arranged within the membrane with option number 1, polar head towards inner side and the hydrophobic tails towards outer side. Option number 2, both heads and tails towards outer side. Option number 3, heads towards outer side and tail towards inside. And option number 4, both heads and tail towards inner side. So which option here is the correct one, student? If you are talking about cell membrane or plasma membrane, we know that, student, the main lipids, it is phospholipid. The main lipid, it is the phospholipid. lipid having the two parts. One is hydrophilic head and another one is hydrophobic tail. We know that student head is facing, it should face towards the outer side. It will face towards the outer side, and hydrophobic tail it will facing towards the inner side. It will facing towards the inner side. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 131. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 131 of topic cell membrane. Here it is mentioned that the major lipids are phospholipids that are arranged in a bilayer. Also the lipids are arranged within the membrane with the polar heads towards the outer sides and the hydrophobic tails towards the inner part. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find correct answer, student. It is option number 3. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which of the following statement is false? Option number 1, in solutions of different pH, the structure of amino acid changes. Option number 2, protein is homopolymer. Option number 3, non-essential amino acids are synthesized by animals. And option number 4, dietary proteins are source of essential amino acids. So which option here is the correct one? If we come to the option number 1, we know that in solutions of the different pH, the structure of amino acid changes. Option 1 is the correct one. Option number 2, protein is homopolymer. This is incorrect, student, because we know that protein is not homopolymer. Protein is heteropolymer. It is not homopolymer, student. It is heteropolymer. That's why option number 2 here is incorrect one. Option number 3, non-essential amino acids. We know that, student, non-essential amino acids are synthesized by the animals. So option number 3 is also being the correct one. And if we come to the option number 4, dietary proteins, we know that it is the sources of the essential amino acids. So option number 4 is also being the correct one. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 144. And here it is mentioned that hence in solutions of different pH, the structure of amino acid changes, in which B is called the deuter ionic form. So different structure should be observed in solutions of different pH, the structure of amino acid changes. And if we come to NCERT page number 147, here it is also mentioned, student, page. Here it is mentioned that dietary proteins are the sources of essential amino acids. Here it is mentioned. Therefore, amino acids can be essential or non-essential. The latter are those which our body can make, while we get essential amino acids through our diet or food. And if we come to NCERT page number 149, student, here it is mentioned that proteins, as mentioned earlier, are heteropolymers containing strings of amino acids. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, starting of metaphase is marked by option number 1, complete disintegration of nuclear membrane. Option number 2, disappearance of ER, GB, nucleolus and nuclear envelope. Option number 3, initiation of condensation chromosomal material. And option number 4, chromosomes align at the equatorial plate. So which option, student, here is the correct one? We know that, student, the starting of second phase, that means we are talking about the metaphase after the prophase, is marked by is marked by complete disintegration of nuclear membrane. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 165. And here we come to NCERT page number 165 of the topic metaphase. Here it is mentioned, student, that the complete disintegration of the nuclear envelope marks the start of the second phase of mitosis. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 1. Thank you.
Let's move on to our next question. The main difference between active and passive transport across cell membrane is, so active is a transport which involves energy, but passive is without energy. So let's see, passive transport is non-selective, whereas active transport is selective. So this is not the main difference, because in passive we also includes facilitated diffusion. That's why we cannot include this difference. Passive transport requires a concentration gradient across a biological membrane, whereas active transport requires energy to move solutes. Yes, exactly. This is the main difference. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 178. So here we can see that both simple diffusion and facilitated transport are a type of passive transport, and they do not require ATP energy, and their transport is downhill transport, whereas in active transport we can see this is an uphill type of transport and it requires ATP energy. Going back to our question, so the correct answer for this question is option number 2. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, hydroponics, option number 1, requires tap water and mineral nutrient salts. Option number 2 is a technique of growing plants in a nutrient solution in the complete absence of soil. Option number 3, it has been successfully employed as a technique for the commercial production of fruits like apple, orange, etc. And option number 4, the solution should be poorly aerated to obtain the optimum growth. So which option here is the correct one if we are talking about the technique hydroponics? Hydroponics. We know that, student, what will happen in hydroponics. In this method, the plants are growing in a nutrient solution in complete absence of soil. So that technique, it is called hydroponics. And reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 194. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 194, and here it is mentioned that, student, in hydroponics what will happen. In 1860, Julius von Sachs, a prominent German botanist, demonstrated for the first time that plants could be grown to a maturity in a defined nutrient solution in complete absence of soils. This technique of growing plants in a nutrient solution, it is known as hydroponics. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you.
Let's move on to our next question. In C3 plants, when oxygen concentration is more, the oxygen binds to rubisco and RUBP gets changed to one molecule each of phosphoglycerate and phosphoglycolate. And this process is known as photorespiration, that occurs only in C3 plants and not in C4 plants. Why so? Because they do have a process or a method by which they can increase the CO2 concentration around the Rubisco enzyme, which do have both the activities, that is carboxylase and oxygenase, and it will depends on the concentration of these two gases that which activity will it perform, carboxylase activity or oxygenase activity. So when oxygen concentration is more than CO2, then it will start binding to oxygen and will start the process of photorespiration. That means instead of two molecules of phosphoglycerate in this process, you will get one molecule each of phosphoglycerate and phosphoglycolate. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 220, that what is photorespiration. So here we can see that in C3 plants, some O2 does bind to Rubisco and hence CO2 fixation is decreased. Here the RUBP, instead of being converted to two molecules of PGA, binds with oxygen to form one molecule of phosphoglycerate and phosphoglycolate, that is two carbon compound in a pathway called photorespiration. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 4. Thank you. Let's see our next question. Select the wrong statement. When tripalmitin is used as a substrate in respiration, the RQ is 0.7. It is the correct statement. Tripalmitin, that is fatty acid. The intermediate compound which links glycolysis with Krebs cycle is acetyl coenzyme A, and the reaction is known as link reaction. Next is one glucose molecule yield a net gain of 36 ATP molecules during fermentation. No, not at all. It yields only and only 2 ATP molecules during fermentation. So fermentation is a kind of anaerobic respiration, and here we can see that only 2 ATP molecules are gained during this process. So here we can see that the ATP, number of ATP molecules during anaerobic respiration, or here we can say during fermentation. So less than 7% of the energy in glucose is released and not of all of it is trapped as high energy bonds of ATP. So the number of ATP produced here in fermentation process is only 2 ATP molecules. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 3. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which of the following is widely used in tea plantation? Option number 1 GA3, option number 2 auxin, option number 3 cytokinin, and option number 4 ABA. So which option here is the correct one? We know that student, if you are talking about the tea plantation, we know that the removal of the shoot tips, it is called decapitation. Usually result in the growth of lateral buds. It is widely used in tea plantation and hedge making. An important application of auxin. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 248. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 248 of the topic auxin. Here our topic auxins. And here it is mentioned, student, that removal of shoot tips, that is decapitation, usually results in the growth of lateral buds. It is widely used in tea plantation hedge making. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, arithmetic growth of plant is mathematically expressed by the given equation. LT is equal to L0 plus RT. What does R indicates in this equation? Option number 1, growth rate during log phase. Option number 2, length of organ at time 0. Option number 3, total growth per unit time. And option number 4, elongation per unit time. So which option here is the correct one? We know that, student, if you are talking about the LT, it stands for length at time t. If we are talking about L0, it stands for length at time 0. Whereas if we stand for R, it stands for elongation per unit time. Elongation per unit time, or it also stands for growth rate. It also stands for growth rate. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 243. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 243, and here our equation, it is mentioned mathematically, it is expressed as LT is equal to L0 plus RT. LT, length at time t, L0, length at time 0, R is growth rate or elongation per unit time. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, choose the incorrect match with respect to chromosome number in diploid cells of organism. Here the options are: option number 1, dog 78, option number 2, housefly 12, option number 3, fruit fly 4, and option number 4, rat 42. So which option here is the correct one? If we are talking about the diploid cell of an organism, that means we are talking about the myocyte. So student, if we know that dog having the diploid number of the chromosome, it is 78, housefly it is 12, but fruit fly it is incorrect, student, because we know that the diploid number of the cells in fruit fly, it is not 4, student, it is 8. So option number 3 is incorrect one. Option number 4, rat 42. So student, the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 13. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 13, and here it is mentioned that housefly it is 12, rat it is 42, here it is mentioned dog 78, and fruit fly 8. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 3. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, the phenomena wherein the ovary develops into a fruit without fertilization is called. Option number 1, parthenocarpy, option number 2, apomixis, option number 3, asexual reproduction, and option number 4, sexual reproduction. So which option here is the correct one? We know that, student, there are few species, in which fruits develop without fertilization. It is called parthenocarpic fruit. Example, banana being a parthenocarpic fruit. And the reference of this question, student, come from NCERT page number 36 and 37. Here it is mentioned, student, that there are few species. Moving to next page, in which fruits develop without fertilization. Such fruits are called parthenocarpic fruits. Example, banana is one such example. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, perisperm is option number 1 residual nucellus, option number 2 residual endosperm, option number 3 covering of fruit, and option number 4 covering of seed. So which option here is the correct one? We know that, student, in some seeds of black pepper and beet, remnant of nucellus are also persistent this residual persistent nucellus is called perisperm. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 36. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 36. Here our topic, that is perisperm. And here it is mentioned, occasionally in some seeds such as black pepper and beet, remnants of nucellus are also persistent. This residual persistent nucellus is the perisperm. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, sickle cell anemia is an example of option number 1 sex-linked inheritance, option number 2 deficiency disease, option number 3 autosomal heritable disease, and option number 4 infectious disease. So which is the correct one? We know that, student, we are talking about sickle cell anemia. And we know that, student, it is an autosome linked recessive trait that can be transmitted from parents to the offspring when both the partners are carrier for gene, that means heterozygous. heterozygous. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 90. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 90 and our topic, it is sickle cell anemia. Here it is mentioned, this is an autosomal linked recessive trait that can be transmitted from parents to the offspring when both the partners are carrier for the gene or heterozygous. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 3. Thank you.
Let's see our next question. What will be the percentage inheritance of a disorder from an X-linked diseased father to his son? So if we talk about an X-linked inheritance like hemophilia, so if mother is hemophilic and father is normal, or we can say hemophilic, so what will be the chances of having an hemophilic daughter or son? So here mother is hemophilic, that's why we can say so this is the condition that all the daughters, all the sons here in this case will be affected. But if we talk about that, what will be the percentage inheritance of a disorder from an X-linked diseased father to his son? X-linked disease, mother is normal, but only father is hemophilic. Let's see in this case. So this is the situation we have been asked in this question. Let's see, father is normal, father is affected and mother is normal. So here daughters only will be what? We can say carriers, while all the sons will be normal. Why so? Because son will inherit Y chromosome from father, not the X chromosome, and the alleles of these type of disease are present on X chromosome, not the Y, and son will always inherit Y chromosome from their fathers, and that's why 0% we can say chances are there from inheritance of a disorder of an X-linked disease from father to his son. Let's go to our NCERT. So in these kind of diseases, crisscross inheritance patterns are followed. That means from mother, son will inherit, from father, daughter will be inheriting these kind of diseases. So here we can see that this is being given here on page number 89, that it is evident that this X-linked recessive trait shows transmission from carrier female to male progeny. So these kind of X-linked disorders actually follows crisscross pattern. That means from mother they will be transferred to son, and from father they will be transferred to daughter. So this is crisscross pattern which is being followed in these kind of diseases. So the correct answer for this question will be option number 1. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, isotopes used in proving semi-conservative replication of DNA were option number 1 14N 14C, option number 2 14N 15N, option number 3 14N 31P, and option number 4 14C 31P. So which option here is the correct one? We know that student, the isotopes used in semi-conservative replication of the DNA, it is 14N and 15N. How we can say student that, because we know that student 15N is not a 15N is not a radioactive isotope and it can be separated from 14N only based on densities. And the reference of this question, student, it comes from NCERT page number 105. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 105, and here it is mentioned, student, that please note that 15N is not a radioactive isotope and it can be separated from 14N only based on densities. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you.
Hello everybody. Today we are going to solve the question which is based from the class 12th and chapter 6, that is a molecular basis of inheritance. So that's match up based question we are having here, and these are 2 columns, okay, and we have to match according to their sequences, so, and according to their function resemblance. VNTR, you know very well that VNTRs, generally we are using these words and these terms in the completely DNA fingerprinting. So VNTR is completely resemble with the DNA fingerprinting. So next one is intron and axon. You know very well that splicing is a process where we have to remove the intron because these are the non-coding sequences, okay. So we are discussing about the intron and axon. So intron, we are talking about the intron. What is that? That is a non-coding sequences, okay, and we have to remove these non-coding sequences, okay, and there is no use of these introns in the translation. So these are the non-coding sequences, and axon, these are the coding sequences. What that are? These are the coding sequences, okay. So intron and axon, okay, these are the both. Actually we are discussing all these terms in the splicing, okay. That is a splicing. Splicing is the method of removing intron and joining of axon for the translation process. That is, we can say now we are going to convert heterogeneous mRNA into the homogeneous mRNA for the complete translation process. Okay, now the next one is dystrophin. You know very well that dystrophin is the largest gene, okay. That is the largest gene and it is located at the first chromosome of human chromosomes. And now that satellite DNA, that is satellite DNA is a bulk DNA. I will show you each and every point in the NCERT, okay. So according to these resemblance, which one is the correct option? So the second option, because A goes with Q, B goes with S, okay, that B goes with S, C dystrophin, that is with P, and the last D that goes with R, bulk DNA. So we have solved all the points according to their requirements, according to their functions, according to their resemblance, and now the time has come to show you the all points in the NCERT. It is actually located at the different places. Now first one, we are discussing that at the page number, at the page number 122, that is 122, and here only we are having that variable number. The technique of DNA fingerprinting was initially developed by Alex Jeffrey, okay. He used a satellite DNA as a prop that show very high degree of polymorphism. It was VNTRs, variable number tandem repeats. Okay, that is the short form is already given here. So it is mainly related with the DNA fingerprinting. That the next one is finally comes before this. Yes. And what was that? That is satellite DNA. Okay. At the page number 121, because 122 we have discussed, and before that it is there. So 121 chapter, page number I mean, that is the 121 page number. Okay. And the next point is here only. So now I am going to show you. Yes, this is the bulk DNA forms a major peak of other small peaks are referred as satellite DNA. Okay, because we were having that point as well, that satellite DNA, that bulk DNA, these are both associated with each other. And finally next, at the page number 120, this is the page number 120, and dextrophin we are going to discuss. Yeah, page number 120, I am going to show you this one. Okay, and it is available here only. Okay, it is the second point, salient features. We are discussing about the salient features of human genome. Okay, the average gene consists 3000 bases, but the size vary generally, with the largest non-human gene being dystrophin. Okay, that is dystrophin contain 2.4 million bases. Okay, so it is the largest gene. It was also a point that dystrophin is the largest gene. And finally, I am going to show you at the page number 121, I will show you the sequences as well, where the splicing mainly we perform. Yes, these are the intron and these are the exon. So now we are going to remove these introns. Okay, this is the splicing process. Here only we can understand this. Yeah, at the page number, yeah, at the page number 111. Okay, at the page number 111, and it is clearly mentioned that in second complexity the primary transcript contain both exon this one, okay, and intron, and are non-functional, hence introns and are non-functional, hence subjected to process that is called splicing, where the introns are removed. We have already discussed this thing. So finally we have come on the all points, and which one is completely resemble, that is the second option is completely correct for this question. Thank you very much, students.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, go through the following diagram of nucleosome, structural unit of chromatin, identify its componental parts indicated by A, B and C. So here diagram of nucleosome is given, and that is labeled with A, B and C. We have to identify the parts A, B, C. Here the options are, option number 1, A RNA, B non-histone, C histone. Option number 2, A DNA, B H1 histone, C histone octamer. Option 3, A RNA, B histone octamer, C H1 histone. Option 4, A DNA, B non-histone, C histone. So which option here is the correct one? So student, here we are talking about A. A is matching, it is matching with DNA. A is refer to DNA. B is refer student, B will represent, it will represent to H1 histone. And C will represent student, it will represent histone octamer. It will represent histone octamer. Clear? And the reference of this question student comes from NCERT page number 99 of the diagram nucleosome. Here we come to NCERT page number 99, and here we come to the diagram of the nucleosome. here the figure of nucleosome is given, and here it will represent, A will represent the DNA, B will represent, it will represent the H1 histone, and C will represent, it will represent the histone octamer. So the correct answer for this question, student, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer. A is DNA in option 2 and 4, B is H1 histone, it is 2, and C is histone octamer. So student, here we find the correct answer, it is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, the fish-like giant reptile which existed 200 Maya was option number 1 pteranodon, option number 2 ichthyosaur, option number 3 triceratops, and option number 4 tyrannosaurus. So student, which of the option is the correct one? We know that student, some of these land reptiles, some of these land reptiles went back into water, went back into water to evolve fish-like giant reptiles probably 200 Maya. Example, ichthyosaurus. Ichthyosaurus. And the reference of this question, student, it comes from NCERT page number 140. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 140, and here it is mentioned, student, that some of these land reptiles went back into water to evolve into fish-like reptiles, probably 200 Maya. Example, ichthyosaurs. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student, it is option number 2. Thank you.
Our next question is, the best way to obtain bacteria and viruses free plants through tissue culture is meristem culture. And as we all know that meristems are found at the tips, that is apical meristems. So here we can see stem and shoot tip or shoot tip culture is the best way to obtain bacteria and viruses free plants. Why so? Because these tips or apex part of the plant, that is shoot tip, do have high concentration of oxygen, and they have regularly dividing or actively dividing cells. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 177. Another important application of the method is the recovery of healthy plants from diseased plants. Even if the plant is infected with the virus, the meristem, that is apical and axillary, is free of virus. Hence, one can remove the meristem and grow it in vitro to obtain virus-free plants. For example, banana, sugarcane, and potato. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 3. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which of the following is not a component of downstream processing? Here the options are option number 1 separation, option number 2 purification, option number 3 preservation, and option number 4 expression. So which option here is the correct one if we are talking about the component of the downstream processing? If we are talking about the component of downstream processing, we know that, student, if you are talking about component of downstream processing, it should include the separation, it should include the purification, and it should also include the preservation. So these are the components of the downstream processing. But which one is not a component, student? It is expression. And the reference of this question is given from the NCERT page number 205. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 205, and here it is mentioned in downstream processing that the process includes separation and purification, which are collectively referred to as downstream processing. The product has to be formulated with suitable preservatives. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, assertion A, biotechnology deals with techniques that use living organisms to produce products useful for humans. Reason R, it uses only a unicellular organism. Here options are option number 1, if both assertion and reason are true and reason is the correct explanation. Option 2, if both assertion and reason are true but reason is not the correct explanation of assertion. Option number 3, if assertion is true but reason is false. And option number 4, if assertion is false but reason is true. So which option here is the correct one? If we come to the assertion A, here it deals that biotechnology deals with the techniques that use living organisms to produce products which are useful for humans. That means statement assertion A here is the correct one. But if you are talking reason R, it uses only a unicellular organism, it is incorrect, student, because we know that it uses a genetically modified organisms. GMO. That's why it is reason R is incorrect. And here the correct answer, student, if assertion is true but reason is false. But before this, come to the NCERT site for the reference of this question, and here the reference is given on NCERT page number 193, and here it is mentioned that biotechnology deals with techniques of using live organisms or enzymes from organisms to produce products and processes useful to humans. It is mentioned. And if we come to the next point, here it is also mentioned, student, that it is used in a restricted sense today to refer to such of those processes which use genetically modified organisms to achieve the same on a larger scale. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 3. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, amensalism is an association between two species where option number 1, one species is harmed and other is benefited. Option number 2, one species is harmed and other is unaffected. Option number 3, one species is benefited and other is unaffected. And option number 4, both the species are harmed. So which option here is the correct one if you are talking about amensalism, student? Amensalism. So what will happen, student? Species A, species B. We know that, student, one species is harmed, so it is represented by minus sign, and other species is unaffected, so it is represented by 0 sign. So in amensalism, one species is harmed while the other species is unaffected, so it is represented by 0 sign. And the reference of this question, student, it is given on NCERT page number 233. So for the reference of this question, come to the NCERT page number 233, and here it is mentioned, student, in amensalism, on the other hand, one species is harmed whereas the other is unaffected. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, given diagram represent a pyramid of biomass in an aquatic ecosystem. So a given diagram will represent two pyramid of biomass biomass in an aquatic ecosystem. Here we have to identify A, B and select the correct options. Here the options are: option number 1, A is phytoplanktons and B is zooplanktons. Option number 2, A is zooplanktons and B is phytoplanktons. Option 3, A is small body animals, and option 4, B is small body animals. So which is the correct one? We know that, student, in the figure it is given inverted pyramid of biomass. Inverted pyramid of biomass. And that inverted pyramid of biomass, it is an aquatic ecosystem. So what will happen in it? Here small standing crops of phytoplanktons supports large standing crops zooplanktons. Here it is mentioned that a small standing crop of phytoplanktons, it should support a large standing crops of zooplanktons. And the reference of this question, student, it is come from the NCERT page number 248. Here it is mentioned inverted pyramid of biomass, small standing crops of phytoplanktons supports large standing crops of zooplanktons. Here is given. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question. Here we find correct answer. A is phytoplanktons and B is zooplanktons. So student, here the correct answer, it is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, if 20 joule of energy is trapped at producer level, then how much energy will be available to peacock as food in the following food chain? So a food chain is given, that is plant is being eaten by mice and mice is being eaten by snake and snake is being eaten by peacock. Here the options are: option number 1, 0.02 joule, option number 2, 0.002 joule, option 3, 0.2 joule, and option number 4, 0.0002 joule. So which option here is the correct one? So let us come to the food chain. According to Lindemann's law, only 10% of energy is passed to the next tropic level start from the lower. And the food chain which given in the question, it is plant which is being eaten by mice, which is being eaten by snake, and which is being eaten by peacock. And if 20 joule of energy is trapped at producer level, plant is the producer, so producer should trap 20 joule of energy, then only 10% energy is passed to the mice. That means only 2 joule of energy is passed to the mice. And if a snake is eaten the mice, then only 10% energy is passed to the snake. That means it is 0.2 joule. And if peacock is eat the snake, then only 10% of energy is passed to the peacock, which is 0.02 joule energy. So student, here the answer, it is option number 1, 0.02 joule. The reference of this question, student, comes from the NCERT page number 247. So here we come to the reference for this question, and here it is mentioned, student, that the number of tropic levels in the grazing food chain is restricted as the transfer of energies follows 10% law. only 10% of the energy is transferred to each tropic level from the lower tropic level. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, the process of accumulation of a dark colored amorphous substance that is highly resistant to microbial action and undergoes decomposition and at an extremely slow rate is called. Option number 1, mineralization. Option number 2, humidification. Option number 3, organization. And option number 4, transformation. So which option here is the correct one? We know that student, humidification leads to accumulation of dark colored amorphous substance that is highly resistant to microbial action and undergoes decomposition at an extremely slow rate. And the reference of this question is student given on NCERT page number 244. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 244, where it is mentioned that humidification leads to accumulation of a dark colored amorphous substance called humus that is highly resistant to microbial action and undergoes decomposition at an extremely slow rate. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which of the following is not an invasive alien species in the Indian context? Option number 1, Lantana. Option number 2, Cynodon. Option number 3, Parthenium. And option number 4, Eichhornia. So which option here is the correct one? We know that, student, an invasive alien species in the Indian context are, first is Lantana, next is Parthenium, which is also known as carrot grass, student. Parthenium, which is also known as carrot grass, and Eichhornia, which is also known as water hyacinth. So which is not an invasive alien species in the Indian context? It is Cynodon. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 265. So here we come to the NCERT page number 265, and here it is mentioned, student, that you must be familiar with the environmental damage caused and threat posed to our native species by invasive weed species like carrot grass, which is Parthenium, Lantana, and water hyacinth, which is Eichhornia. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, gamma are multicellular green structures buds for vegetative propagation. These are found in gamma cups in option number 1 Riccia thallus, option number 2 Markensia thallus, option number 3 Funaria protonema, and option number 4 Fun prothallus. So which is the correct one if you are talking about the gamma? We know that student gamma are green multicellular asexual buds which develop in a small receptacle called gamma cups located on thalli, and it is found in Markensia. The reference of this question student comes from the NCERT page number 35. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 35, and here our topic gamma. If we are talking about the gamma, we know that student gamma are green multicellular asexual buds which develop in small receptacles called gamma cups located on the thalli. Here it is mentioned, and it is found in the Markensia. Example, it is in Markensia thalloid. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is: in some plants, a slender lateral branch arises from the base of the main axis and after growing aerially for some time arch downwards to touch the ground. These plants are option number 1 Pistia and Eichhornia, option number 2 mint and jasmine, option number 3 banana, strawberry and chrysanthemum, and option number 4 opuntia and euphorbia. So which is the correct one? We know that student in plants like mint and jasmine, a slender lateral branch arises from the base of the main axis and after growing aerially for some time arch downwards to touch the ground. Clear student? And the reference of this question student comes from the NCERT page number 69. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 69, and here it is mentioned that in plants like mint and jasmine, a slender lateral branch arises from the base of the main axis and after growing aerially for some time arch downward to touch the ground. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, in dicot stem, which of the following consists of simple permanent tissues such as parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma? Here the options are option number 1, epidermal tissue system, option number 2, ground tissue system, option number 3, vascular tissue system, and option number 4, more than one option is correct. So which is the correct one? We know that student, all tissues except epidermis and vascular bundles consist of ground tissue system. It consists of simple tissues such as parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. And the reference of this question student comes from NCERT page number 89. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 89 for the reference of the question, and here it is mentioned, all tissues except epidermis and vascular bundles constitute the ground tissue. It consists of simple tissues such as parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find student the correct answer for this question student, it is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which one is correct about the bacterial cell envelope? Option number 1, the outermost cell wall followed by glycocalyx and then plasma membrane. Option number 2, the outermost glycocalyx followed by plasma membrane and then cell wall. Option number 3, the outermost glycocalyx followed by cell wall and plasma membrane. And option number 4, cell envelope is chemically very simple and consists of only plasma membrane. So which option here is the correct one? We know that student, most prokaryotic cells, particularly bacterial cell, have chemically complex cell envelope It consists of tightly bound three-layered structure outermost glycocalyx followed by cell wall and plasma membrane. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 128. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 128, and here our topic, cell envelope and its modification. And here it is clearly mentioned, student, that most prokaryotic cells, particularly the bacterial cells, have a chemically complex cell envelope. The cell envelope consists of a tightly bound 3-layered structure, the outermost glycocalyx followed by the cell wall and then the plasma membrane. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 3. Thank you.
Let's see our next question. The below diagram represent the nitrogenous bases which are found in nucleic acid. They are component of nucleotides which are monomer units in nucleic acids. Identify the correct combination. So nitrogenous bases can be of two types, purines and pyrimidines. Purines are double ring structure, while pyrimidines have single ring structure. So let's see. If we talk about, this is adenine, yes, but this is not thymine. So this is not guanine, this is adenine. This is adenine, this is uracil. Yes, let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 145. So here we can see. So this is adenine, and here NH2 group is present. This is uracil, which is a pyrimidine, and here we can see NH group. So yes, this is correct. So the correct answer for this question is option number 3rd. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, it is the final phase of prophase 1. 2. Terminalization of chiasmata occurs. 3. Fully condensed chromosomes. 4. Spindle is assembled. 5. Nucleolus and nuclear membrane breaks down. The above characteristics are attributed to. First of all, student, we know that the final phase of prophase 1, if we are talking about the prophase 1, it is divided into leptotene, zygotene, pectine, diplotene, and final one, it is dikinases. So student, the final phase of prophase 1, it is dikinases. Here the options are option number 1 zygotene, option number 2 dikinases, option number 3 diplotene, and option number 4 metaphase 1. And if we are talking about the final phase of prophase 1, it is dikinases, and we know that what are the events or the characters which are attributed to this phase, which is called dikinases. We know that, student, the events which occur in dikinases, the terminalization of the chiasmata occurs, and fully condensed chromosomes becomes the fully condensed. So this is the event, this is the event, and spindle is also assembled, and there will be the nucleolus and nuclear membranes breaks down. So nucleolus and nuclear membranes breaks down during this phase, which is dikinases. And the reference of this question, student, comes from the NCERT page number 168. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 168, and here we are talking about the stage dikinases. And here it is mentioned, student, that the final stage of meiotic prophase 1 is dikinases. This is marked by terminalization of chiasmata. During this phase, the chromosomes are fully condensed. Here it is mentioned, and the meiotic spindle is assembled to prepare the homologous chromosomes for separation. By the end of dikinases, the nucleolus disappears and the nuclear envelope also breaks down. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question. Here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, micronutrient which is important in transport of sugar, utilization of Ca2 plus and cell division is option number 1 phosphorus, option number 2 boron, option number 3 potassium, and option number 4 sulfur. So which is the correct one? Here we are talking about the micronutrient. And the micronutrient which play a role in transport of sugar and utilization of Ca2 plus. This is the role of the micronutrient which is called boron, student. So the micronutrient which help in the transportation of the sugar or utilization of Ca2 plus, it is boron, and the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 198. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 198, and here our topic boron, and here it is mentioned, student, that boron is required for uptake and utilization of Ca2 plus, and here it is also mentioned, student, that it also help in carbohydrate translocation. It is mentioned. So student, and it also play role in membrane functioning, pollen germination, cell elongation, cell differentiation. It also help. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you.
Let's move on to our next question. Assertion says in C3 cycle, the first stable compound is a 3-carbon compound. Yes, this is correct. Why so? Because that is phosphoglyceric acid, which is a 3-carbon compound, and 2 molecules of, we can say 2 molecules of PGA are formed in the very first reaction or carbon fixation of C3 cycle. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 216, that here we can say carboxylation is the fixation of CO2 into a stable organic intermediate. It is the most crucial step of the Calvin cycle, and this reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme RUBP carboxylase, which results in the formation of 2 molecules of 3-PGA. That means a 3-carbon compound which is phosphoglyceric acid. Reason says in C4 plants Calvin cycle is absent. No, Calvin cycle is present in all the plants present on this earth. So this is false about C4 plant, and here we can see that this is the CO2 released in the bundle sheath cells enters the C3 or the Calvin pathway, a pathway common to all the plants, so which is occurring in bundle sheath cells. This is C3 cycle or Calvin cycle. Let's go back to our question. So here we can say assertion is true, but reason is false. So the correct answer is option number 3. Thank you. Let's see our next question. Find the number of ATP which are formed with the utilization of 10 oxygen molecule in ETS with respect to NADH2 oxidation. So let's see what happened during ETS, that is oxidation of NADH2 and FADH2, which are reducing powers that are formed during respiration of 1-glucose molecules. So if we talk about NADH2, it will gives out 2 electrons during its oxidation. If we talk about 1 NADH2, it will give 2 electrons during its oxidation, and 2 electrons are required or are accepted by half O2 molecule. 2 electrons are accepted by half O2 molecules. That means here 2 NADH2 will gives you 4 electrons, and that means 1 O2 molecule. So here we are being given with 10 oxygen molecules and 10 oxygen molecules here means 20 NADH2. Then 10 oxygen molecules will be utilized in the case when 20 NADH2 molecules will get oxidized, because they will release how many electrons? That is the double, that is 40 electrons, and that means 20 NADH2 means 1 NADH2 will give you 3 ATP. That means 20 NADH2 will gives you 20 into 3, that is 60 ATP. This is the answer. So let's go to our NCERT and see this on our let's see. So what happens during ETS, that is oxidation of the reducing powers, and this oxidation is being coupled with the formation of ATP by developing a proton gradient. So here we can see that half O2 is accepting 2 electrons, and these electrons are coming or are ejected out by these reducing powers during their oxidation. So this is 2 electrons released by this NADH plus H plus during their oxidation, which are accepted by half O2 and they form water. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 4. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, match the following. So 2 column is given, column 1 and column 2. In column 1 PGR is given and in column 2 function is given. So column 1 A cytokinins, column 2 1 flowering in pineapple, column 1 B auxins, column 2 lateral shoot growth, column 1 C ethylene, column 1 3 flowering in mango, column 1 D ABA, column 2 4 seed dormancy, 5 promotes root growth. Here the options are option number 1 A2 B1 C3 D4, option number 2 A2 B4 C3 D5, option number 3 A3 B5 C2 D4, option number 4 A1 B3 C2 D5. So which option here is the correct one? So let's match the items given in the column 1 with the column 2 to get the answer. If we are talking about the cytokinin, we know that the cytokinin will help, it should help in the lateral shoot growth, student. The lateral shoot growth is the function of the cytokinin. So A is matching, student. A is matching with 2. I am writing here 2. Now move to the B, auxin. We know that student, auxin help in the flowering in pineapple. So B is matching with 1. I am writing here B is matching with 1. C, ethylene. Ethylene help in flowering in the mango. C is matching, it is matching with 3. I am writing here C is matching with 3. And D, ABA. ABA help, it help in seed dormancy. D is matching with 4. So that is the correct match. Where A is 2. A is 2 in option number 1 and option number 2. Move to B. B is 1. B is 1 in option number 1. C is 3 and D is 4. So here we find the correct answer. But before this, go to the NCERT site for the reference of this question. And the reference comes from the page 248 and 250. So here we come 248. Here our topic auxin. Auxin help flowering in pineapple. Here it is mentioned auxin promote flowering, example in pineapple. And come to the page number 250. Cytokinin. Cytokinin, here it is mentioned that it help in, it is on page number 250. Here it is mentioned cytokinin help in lateral shoot. It help in lateral shoot growth. Lateral shoot growth. That is the role of the cytokinin. And if you are talking about the ethylene, ethylene help in flowering in mango. Here it is mentioned, student, that it will help in the flowering in mango. Here it's mentioned. It also induces flowering in mango. And if you are talking about the ABA, help in seed dormancy. It is mentioned that ABA plays an important role in seed development, maturation and dormancy. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question. Here we find the correct answer, student, for this question. It is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, from among the sets of terms given below, identify those that are associated with the gynoecium. Here the options are option number 1, stigma, ovule, embryo sac, placenta. Option number 2, thalamus, pistil, style, ovule. Option number 3, ovule, ovary, embryo sac, tapetum. Option number 4, ovule, stamen, ovary, embryo sac. So which option here is the correct one? We know that, student, if we are talking about the structure which is associated with the gynoecium, here if we are talking about the option number 4, here it is stamen, that's why it is incorrect. Here it is tapetum, that's why it is also incorrect, student. And if we are talking about the thalamus, it is also incorrect, this one. But if we are talking about option number 1, these are the structures which are associated with the gynoecium: stigma, ovule, embryo sac, placenta. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 24. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 24, and here it is mentioned the pistil, megasporangium, which is called ovule, and embryo sac. Here the gynoecium represent the female reproductive part of the flower, and gynoecium may consist of the single pistil. Here it is mentioned, and here it is also mentioned each pistil has 3 parts: the stigma, style and ovary. The stigma serve as landing platforms. The style is the elongated slender part beneath the stigma. The basal bulge part of the pistil is the ovary. Inside the ovary, ovarian cavity locule. The placenta is located inside the ovarian cavity. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student, for this question. It is option number 1. Thank you.
Let's move on to our next question. Which of the following crosses will produce 1:1 phenotypic ratio? So let's see, 1:1 phenotypic ratio. If we talk about this, only one heterozygous, here we can see 2 heterozygous pairs are present in this. That means 2 power n. This is the formula for number of gametes formed. So n is equals to number of heterozygous pairs. There are 2, that means 4 type of gametes we will find, and here only a single type of gamete will be formed. But here we can see, if we talk about 4 type of gametes, that means 4 different type of phenotype you will be having. If we talk about the second one, let's see. So here we can see the number of gametes will be AB, second one will be AB, and in this only we will have this type of gamete. So let's make a Punnett square, AB and AB, and here AB and AB. So AA, capital B, A, capital B, small aa, capital B, small aa, cap. So here we can see 50:50 is the ratio, that is 1:1, genotypically and phenotypically. Let's go to our NCERT and see this. Here we can see that the square like this or the crosses like this will have this condition only, where we can see 1:1 will be the ratio. 1:1 will be the ratio, just like in the case of test cross. So let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 2. Thank you. Let's move on to our next question. The process of transcription is terminated by a factor that is known as a row factor. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 109. So this is row factor, which actually binds to RNA polymerase and terminate the process of transcription. So here we can see that in this that yes. So the RNA polymerase is only capable of catalyzing the process of elongation. It associates transiently with initiation factor, that is sigma factor, and termination factor, that is rho, to initiate and terminate the transcription respectively. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 2. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, read the following statements and select the correct option. Here the statement 1. The separated DNA fragment can be visualized only after staining the DNA with a compound known as ethidium bromide followed by exposure to UV radiation. Statement 2. The separated bands of DNA are cut out from the agarose gel and extracted from gel piece. This step is known as elution. Here the options are, option number 1, both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct. Option number 2, statement 1 is correct but statement 2 is incorrect. Option number 3, statement 1 is incorrect but statement 2 is correct. And option number 4, both statement 1 and statement 2 are incorrect. So which is the correct one? So move to the statement 1, whether it is correct or incorrect. Statement 1, the separated DNA fragment. We know that student, the separated bands of the DNA or the separated DNA fragments can be visualized only after staining the DNA with a compound which is known as ethidium bromide, and it is followed by exposure to the UV radiations. That statement here is given is the correct one. And if we come to the statement 2, we know that what is elution. Elution is this, the separated bands of DNA are cut out from the agarose gel and extracted from the gel piece. This step, it is known as elution. This both statement here is the correct one, and the reference of this is given in NCERT page number 198. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 198, and here it is mentioned, student, that on page number 198, here it is mentioned the separated DNA fragment can be visualized only after staining the DNA with a compound, and that compound it is known as ethidium bromide, which is followed by exposure to UV radiation. Here it is mentioned, and here it is also mentioned, student, that the separated bands of DNA are cut out from the agarose gel and extracted from the gel piece, and this step is known as elution. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer. It is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, Gauss principle of competitive exclusion principle states that option number 1, more abundant species will exclude the less abundant species through competition. Option number 2, competition from the same resources excludes species having different food preferences. Option number 3, no two species can occupy the same niche, competes for the same limiting resources. And option number 4, larger organisms exclude smaller ones through competition. So which option here is the correct one if we are talking about the Gauss competitive exclusion principle? So we know that student, Gauss competitive exclusion principle states that two closely related species competing for the same resources cannot coexist indefinitely, cannot coexist indefinitely, and the competitively the inferior one will be eliminated eventually. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT. So here we come to NCERT page number 235, and here it is mentioned from the topic Gauss competitive exclusion principle states that two closely related species competing for the same resources cannot coexist indefinitely, and the competitively inferior one will be eliminated eventually. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question. Here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 3. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which one of the following sets of animals share a 4-chambered heart? Here the options are: option number 1, amphibian, reptiles, birds; option number 2, crocodiles, birds, mammals; option number 3, crocodiles, lizards, turtles; and option number 4, lizards, mammals, birds. So which of the following option is the correct one? Now student, if we are talking about the 4-chambered heart, if we are talking about 4-chambered heart, 4-chambered heart, it is seen in mammals, in which heart is 4-chambered. In aves, that means in birds, and in reptiles, the heart is usually 3-chambered. In reptiles, the heart is usually 3-chambered, but 4-chambered in crocodile. Clear, student? So 4-chambered heart, it is seen in mammals, aves, and in crocodile. And the reference of this question, student, comes from the NCERT page number 58. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 58, and we are talking about the class Reptilia. And in class Reptilia, here it is mentioned, student, that heart is usually 3-chambered but 4-chambered in crocodiles. Here it is mentioned. And if we come to class aves, here it is also mentioned, student, that in class aves the heart is 4-chambered. Heart is completely 4-chambered. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2, crocodiles, birds, mammals. Here correct answer, option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, scientific name of starfish is option number 1, Echinus; option number 2, Lemulus; option number 3, Echidna; and option number 4, Asterias. So which option here is the correct one? If we are talking about the scientific name of starfish, we know that, student, if we are talking about the starfish, it comes to phylum Echinodermata. And if we are talking about the starfish scientific name, if we are talking about the scientific name of starfish, it is Asterias. It is Asterias, student, which is the scientific name of the starfish. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 54. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 54 and we are talking about the topic Echinodermata, phylum Echinodermata. And here it is mentioned, student, that the scientific name of starfish, it is Asterias. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which of the following animals are true coelomates with bilateral symmetry? Here the options are option number 1, adult echinoderms, option number 2, Eschyhelminthes, option number 3, Platyhelminthes, and option number 4, Annelids. So which option here is the correct one? Now student, here we are talking about if coelomates, animals possessing coelom, coelom are called coelomates. And if you are talking about the bilateral symmetry, the body of the animal can be divided, into identical left and right halves only in one plane. Clear, student? So that symmetry, it is called bilateral symmetry. Now if we have come to the adult echinoderms, we know that, student, adult echinoderms are radially symmetrical, whereas the larva form is bilateral symmetry. So option number 1 is incorrect. Option 2, Eschyhelminthes is pseudocoelomate. So option number 2 is also incorrect, student. Option number 3, Platyhelminthes is acoelomate animal. So option number 3 is also incorrect. But if we come to Annelids, option number 4 is coelomates possessing coelom, and they have show the bilateral symmetry, Annelids. So student, the reference of this question comes from the NCERT page number 52. So here we come to page number 52 of NCERT and we are talking about phylum Annelida. Here our topic, and here it is mentioned, student, that Annelida, they exhibit organ system level of body organization and bilateral symmetry. Here it is mentioned, and they are triploblastic, metamerically segmented, and coelomate animals. Here, student, it is mentioned in NCERT. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 4. Thank you.
Coming on to our next question, select the correct matching. Cuboidal epithelium is found in alveolar wall? No. Columnar epithelium is found in stomach? Yes, in the lining of stomach. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 102, that this is a cuboidal epithelium and they are commonly found in ducts of glands and tubular parts of nephrons and kidneys. And if we talk about columnar epithelium, so they are found in the lining of stomach and intestine and help in secretion and absorption also. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 2. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, the major constituent of connective tissue is option number 1 lipid, option number 2 carbohydrate, option number 3 cholesterol, and option number 4 collagen. So which option here is the correct one? We know that student, in all connective tissue, except blood, the cells secrete fibers, of structural proteins called collagen or elastin. Clear student? And the reference of this question student comes from NCERT page number 103. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 103, and here it is mentioned that the cells the cells secrete fibers of structural proteins called collagen or elastin. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer student. It is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which of the following statement is incorrect? Here the options are option number 1. Endoplasmic reticulum divides the intracellular space into two distinct compartments, luminal and extraluminal compartments. Option number 2, vacuole is membrane bound space that may occupy up to 90% of volume of plant cell. Option number 3, prokaryotic ribosomes are ATS, and option number 4, lysosomes are membrane bound vesicular structures formed by the process of packaging in the Golgi apparatus. So which option here is the correct one, as we have to pick out the incorrect one. If we come to the option number 1, we know that endoplasmic reticulum have the intracellular space and it divided the two distinct compartment, luminal, that means inside the ER, and extraluminal, that is outside the ER. So option number 1 here is the correct one. Option number 2, vacuole is membrane bound space. We all know vacuole is a membrane bound space and it can occupy almost 90% volume of the plant cell. Option 2 is also correct one. Option number 3 here is incorrect because here it is mentioned prokaryotic ribosomes are ATS, but we know that prokaryotic ribosomes, it is not ATS. Prokaryotic ribosomes are 70S student. It is not ATS. So option 3 is incorrect one. Option number 4, lysosomes are membrane bound vesicular structures. We all know that lysosomes are the membrane bound vesicular structures, and these structures are formed by the process of packaging in the Golgi apparatus. So option 4 is also being correct one. And the reference of this question student comes from the NCERT page number 129. So here we come to the NCERT page number 129 for the reference of this question. Here our topic, ribosomes and inclusion bodies, and here it is mentioned student that ribosomes are the site of the protein synthesis and are made of two subunits, 50S and 30S units, which when present together form 70S prokaryotic ribosomes. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, option number 3. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, pigments are considered as the secondary metabolites having some particular functions. Which of the following is an example of pigments? Here the options are option number 1 carotenoids, option number 2 codeine, option number 3 concanavalin A, and option number 4 curcumin. So which option here is the correct one? If we know that student carotenoids is the pigments. Carotenoids is the pigments. Codeine is alkaloid student. It is alkaloids. Concanavalin A, it is lactin. And curcumin, it is drugs. Curcumin is a drugs student. Drugs. And the reference of this question comes student, it comes from the NCERT page number 146. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 146, and here table is given of some secondary metabolites, and here it is mentioned pigments. Carotenoids is the pigments, and here it is also mentioned alkaloids. Here it is mentioned morphine, codeine, and lactins, concanavalin A, and drugs, curcumin. Here it is mentioned student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question. Here we find the correct answer student. It is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, read the following statement and select the correct option. Here statement 1. In the 24-hour average duration of cell cycle of a human cell division proper lasts for only about an hour. Statement 2. The M phase lasts more than 95% of the duration of cell cycle. Here the options are option number 1. Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct. Option number 2, statement 1 is correct but statement 2 is incorrect. Option 3, statement 1 is incorrect but statement 2 is correct. And option number 4, both statement 1 and statement 2 are incorrect. So which option here is the correct one student? So if we come to the statement 1, we know that student, in the 24-hour of average duration of the cell cycle of a human cell, cell division proper lasts for only about an hour. So here statement 1 is the correct one. Statement 2, the M phase lasts more than 95% of the duration of the cell cycle. This is incorrect student, because we know that it is not the M phase, it is the interphase. It is the interphase which lasts more than 95% of the duration of the cell cycle. That's why statement 2 here is incorrect one. So statement 1 is correct, statement 2 is incorrect. The reference of this question student comes from NCERT page number 163. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 163, and here it is mentioned that it is significant to note that in the 24-hour average duration of cell cycle of a human cell division proper lasts for only about an hour. It is mentioned, and here it is also mentioned the interphase lasts more than 95% of the duration of cell cycle. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find statement 1 is correct but statement 2 is incorrect. So here we find the correct answer student. It is option number 2. Thank you.
Let's move on to our next question. Given below is the diagram of the transverse section of alimentary canal. Label it correctly and choose the correct option accordingly. So A is representing the outermost layer, that is serosa. Then B is representing muscularis. C is representing submucosa. And finally, the D1 is representing the mucosa. So serosa, then muscularis, then submucosa, and then mucosa. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 260. This is the outermost one, serosa. Then inner circular and outer longitudinal will combinedly form muscularis layer. Then submucosa, and finally the innermost one, that is mucosa, and after that the innermost cavity, that is lumen. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 4. Thank you. Our next question is the structure which does not contribute to the breathing movements in mammals is larynx, which is also called sound box. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 269, that larynx is a cartilaginous box which helps in sound production and hence called the sound box. Going back to our question, so the correct answer for this question is option number 2. Thank you. Let's move on to our next question. Choose the correct statement with respect to human heart. The atrium and ventricle of the same side lack septum, no. Bicuspid valve guards the opening between right atrium and right ventricle, no, that is tricuspid. Tricuspid valve guard the opening between left atrium and left ventricle, no. The openings of the right and left ventricles into the pulmonary artery and the aorta are provided with semilunar valves. Yes, exactly. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 283 and 84, that the openings of the right and left ventricles into the pulmonary artery and the aorta respectively are provided with the semilunar valves. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 4. Thank you. Let's move on to our next question. The collecting duct of nephrons, that is the functional unit of kidney, extends from cortex to the inner parts of the medulla. Yes, exactly. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 295, that collecting duct is the long duct, extends from the cortex of the kidney to the inner parts of the medulla, and large amounts of water could be reabsorbed from this region to produce a concentrated urine. Let's go back to our questions. So the correct answer for this question is option number 1. Thank you. Let's move on to our next question. Which one is incorrectly matched? Heavy meromyosin has globular head. Yes, it is correct. So here we can see, if we talk about heavy meromyosin, heavy meromyosin has a globular head, and smooth muscles are involuntary muscles. Yes, they are not under our will or control. That is correct. Red muscles have myoglobin. Yes. Troponin is a fibrous protein. No. Let's go to our NCERT back, and here we can see on page number 306 that troponin. So it is a complex protein. A complex protein, troponin, is distributed at regular intervals on the tropomyosin. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 4. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, human adult vertebral formula is option number 1 C4T8 L4 S8 C8, option number 2 C7 85 L5 S6 C7, option number 3 C7 T12 L12 S1 C2, option number 4 C7 T12 L5 S1 C1. So which option here is the correct one? We know that student, the adult human vertebral column, the adult human vertebral column is differentiated into cervical 7, thoracic 12, lumbar 5, sacral 1 fused, and coccygeal 1 fused. So the adult human vertebral column is differentiated. It is differentiated into cervical 7, thoracic 12, lumbar 5, sacral 1 fused, and coccygeal 1 fused. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 310. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 310, and here it is mentioned that the vertebral column is differentiated into cervical 7, thoracic 12, lumbar 5, sacral 1 fused, and coccygeal 1 fused. Here it is mentioned regions starting from the skull. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 4. Thank you.
Coming on to our next question, assertion says two cerebral hemispheres which are a part of forebrain are connected by corpus callosum. Yes, it is correct. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 321, that a deep cleft divides the cerebrum longitudinally into two halves, which are termed as the left and right cerebral hemispheres. The hemispheres are connected by a tract of nerve fibers called corpus callosum. Let's go back to our question. Reason says association areas are responsible for intersensory association of memory and communication. Yes, it is also correct, but not explaining the assertion. Let's go back to our NCERT, and here we can see that the cerebral cortex contains motor areas, sensory areas, and large regions that are neither clearly sensory nor motor in the functions. These regions, called as the association areas, are responsible for complex functions like intersensory associations, memory, and communication. Let's go back to our question. So both assertion and reason are true, but reason is not a correct explanation of the assertion. So the correct option for this question will be option number 2. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, the two groups of steroid hormones produced by ovary is option number 1, estrogen and progesterone, option number 2, estrogen and androgen, option number 3, testosterone and androgen, and option number 4, corticosteroids and estrogen. So which option here is the correct one? We know that student, ovary produces two groups of steroids hormone which is estrogen and progesterone. So student, ovary produces two groups of steroids hormone, and these hormones are estrogen and progesterone. And the reference of this question, student, comes from the NCERT page number 338. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 338, and here our topic ovary. And here it is clearly mentioned, student, that in addition, ovary also produces two groups of steroid hormones called estrogen and progesterone. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 1. Thank you.
Hello everybody. Today we are going to solve the question that is based from class 11th and chapter 22. It's a last chapter. Okay. Chemical coordination of living organism, of animals, of human body. We can say that's a hormone responsible, because this chapter is completely based on the hormones. Hormone responsible for normal sleep-wake cycle. You know very well that 24 hours diurnal process, which we can say it is completely controlled by the melatonin. Okay, that is completely controlled by the melatonin. Okay, and this hormone is secreted by pineal gland. What is that? It is the pineal gland, which is located at the dorsal side of forebrain. Where is that? That is the dorsal side of forebrain. Okay, dorsal side of forebrain it is located, and the melatonin and pineal gland. So it is complete simultaneous process. This is the gland which is located at the dorsal side of forebrain, and this secrete a melatonin hormone which completely form a 24-hour cycle in the human body. It is a diurnal process, we can say, and it is also responsible for sleep-wake cycle. So these are the 4 options. First is epinephrine, second is gastrin, third is melatonin, and last is insulin. So which one is correct? That third option is completely correct, melatonin. Similarly, I am going to show you this in the NCERT as well, and it is located at the page number 334. Okay, it is a page number 334 where you can find this one, and we are discussing that pineal gland. Okay, so this is the pineal gland. It is located at the dorsal side of the forebrain. We have discussed already. Secretes melatonin. Okay, melatonin plays important role of regulation 24 diurnal process. We have discussed already. For example, it helps in maintaining the normal rhythms, sleep-wake cycle. So finally, we have come to the main point, that sleep-wake cycle, because actually that question is asking for the sleep-wake cycle. Okay, so which one is completely right? That melatonin is a option, correct option for this question. Thank you very much, students.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, given below are a few statements related to external fertilization. A, the male and female gametes are formed and released simultaneously. B, only a few gametes are released into the medium. C, water is the medium in a majority of organisms exhibiting external fertilization. D, offspring formed as a result of external fertilization have better chances of survival than those formed inside an organism. Choose the correct statements. Here the options are option number 1 C and D, option number 2 A and C, option number 3 B and D, and option number 4 A and D. So which is the correct one? If we come to the statement A or A, here it is the male and female gametes are formed and released simultaneously. It is correct with respect to the external fertilization, that the male and female gametes are formed and it is released simultaneously. This is the correct one. B, statement B, only a few gametes are released. Here it is mentioned only a few gametes are released, but large number of gametes are released. We know that student, in external fertilization what will happen? Large number of gametes are released into the medium. So statement 2 here is incorrect one, student, because large number of the gametes are released into the medium. Statement B is incorrect. Statement C, water is the medium. We know that, student, in external fertilization, water is the medium in a majority of the organism exhibiting the external fertilization. C statement here is the correct one. D, offspring formed as a result of external fertilization have better chances of survival. It is incorrect, student, because we know that the better chances of survival, it is in internal fertilization, because where proper protection and proper caring occur, so there is better chances of survival of the offspring in the internal fertilization, whereas in external fertilization it is at greater risk. So option number statement D is incorrect one, because it doesn't have the better chances of the survival. That's why it is incorrect. So only 2 statement is correct, A and C. But before this, come to the NCERT site for the reference of this question, student. And here our come from the page number 14, and here we come to the topic external fertilization. So student, here we come to the topic external fertilization, and here it is mentioned in most aquatic organisms such as majority of algae and fishes as well as amphibians, syngamy occurs in the external medium water. That means outside the body of the organism. This is type of gametic fusion, it is called external fertilization, and we know that organism exhibiting external fertilization show great synchrony between the sexes and release a large number of gametes into the surrounding medium water in order to enhance the chances of syngamy. Here it is mentioned, and here it is also mentioned, student, that this happens in the bony fishes and frogs where a large number of offspring are produced. A major disadvantage is that the offspring are extremely vulnerable to predators, threatening their survival up to the adulthood. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, mild uterine contraction at the time of parturition, option number 1, are induced by oxytocin released from maternal pituitary. Option number 2 are called fetal ejection reflex. Option number 3, result due to fully developed placenta only, and option number 4, result due to decrease in level of estrogen. So which option here is the correct one? Now student, here we are talking about mild uterine contraction. We know that, student, the signals from parturition, the signals for parturition originated from fully developed fetus and the placenta which induces mild uterine contraction called fetal ejection reflex. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 54. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 54, and here it is mentioned, student, that the signals for parturition originate from the fully developed fetus and the placenta which induce mild uterine contraction called fetal ejection reflex. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, match the column. So two column is given, column 1, column 2. In column 1A, ICSI, column 2, 1, embryos up to 8 blastomeres transferred to fallopian tube. Column 1B, ZIFT, column 2, 2, transfer of an ovum from donor into the fallopian tube. Column 1C, IUT, column 2, 3, sperm directly injected into ovum. Column 1D, GIFT, column 2, 4, embryos with more than 8 blastomeres transferred to uterus. Here the options are option number 1 A3, B2, C4, D1. Option number 2 A3, B4, C1, D2. Option number 3 A3, B1, C2, D4. And option number 4 A3, B1, C4, D2. So which option here is the correct one? So student, to get the answer, let's match the items given in column 1 with the column 2 to get the answer. So if we are talking about ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection. So student, here it is matched with sperms ICSI, that is intracytoplasmic sperm injection, in which sperm directly injected into an ovum. So A is matching, it is matching with 3 student. So I am writing here A is matching, it is matching with 3. Now B, JEE-FT, it is zygote intrafallopian transfer, and we know that what will happen in zygote intrafallopian transfer, embryos up to 8 blastomeres transferred to fallopian tube. So student, B is matching, it is matching with 1. So I am writing here student, B is matching, it is matching with 1. Now C, IUT, IUT means intrauterine transfer. What will happen in IUT? In IUT, embryos with more than 8 blastomeres transferred to the uterus. So student, IUT is matching, it is matching with 4. So student, I am writing here C is matching, it is matching with 4. Now D, GIFT, it is gamete intrafallopian transfer, and it is matching with student 2, in which transfer of an ovum from donor into the fallopian tube, that is GIFT, gamete intrafallopian transfer. So D is matching, it is matching with 2 student. So that is the correct one, in which A is 3. A is 3 in option 1, 2, 3, 4. B is 1. B is 1 in option 3 and 4. That means 1 is incorrect, 2 is incorrect. C is 4. C is 4 in option number 4. That means 3 is also incorrect, and D is 2. D is still 2 in option number 4 student. But before the mark of the answer, come to the NCERT site for the reference of this question student. And here we come to the NCERT page number 64. And here our topic student, that JEE-FT, that is zygote intrafallopian transfer. Here what will happen? The zygote or early embryos with up to 8 blastomeres could be transferred into the fallopian tube, and that is JEE-FT, zygote intrafallopian transfer. Clear? And if you are talking about IUT student, intrauterine transfer, what will happen in it? Embryos with more than 8 blastomeres into the uterus. So it transfers embryos with more than 8 blastomere into the uterus, that is intrauterine transfer. Now if we come to the student GIFT, that is gamete intrafallopian transfer, what will happen? Transfer of an ovum collected from a donor into the fallopian tube, and that it is called gamete intrafallopian transfer of another female who cannot produce one but can provide suitable environment for fertilization, and further development is another method attempted. Now if we are talking about ICSI, that is intracytoplasmic sperm injection, what will happen student? In it is another specialized procedure to form an embryo in the laboratory, in which sperm is directly injected into ovum. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer student, it is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, medical termination of pregnancy is option number 1, essential in certain cases where continuation of the pregnancy could be harmful or even fatal either to the mother or to the fetus or both. Option number 2, unsafe during the first trimester, i.e. up to 12 weeks of pregnancy. Option number 3, quite safe even if performed by quacks, as it involves no expertise. Option number 4, in India is illegally practiced to discard the male fetus. So which option here is the correct one? Now student, if we are talking about the MTP, that is medical termination of pregnancy. Now what will happen student in MTP? MTP is essential in certain cases where continuation of the pregnancy could be harmful or even fatal either to the mother or to the fetus, both. That means option number 1 here is the correct one. So option 1 is correct one. Option 2, unsafe during the first trimester. This option number 2 is incorrect student, because we know that it is safe. Here it is mentioned it is unsafe, but we know that student it is safe during the first trimester up to 12 weeks of the pregnancy. That's why option 2 is incorrect. Option 3, it is quite safe even if performed by quacks. This option number 3 is incorrect student, because we know that student it is quite unsafe. It is not safe student. It is quite unsafe. It is quite unsafe even if performed by quacks, as it involves no expertise. So it is unsafe student. So option 3 is also incorrect. In India, is illegally practiced to discard the male fetus. This option number 4 is incorrect student, because we know that in India it is legally practiced to discard the female feticide. Female, not male student, female fetus. It is in India, it is legally practiced to discard the female fetus. That's why option number 4 is also being incorrect one. And the reference of this question student comes from NCERT page number 62, and here our topic, medical termination of pregnancy, MTP. And here it is mentioned student that such restrictions are all the more important to check indiscriminate and illegal female feticides which are reported to be high in India. Here it is mentioned student. And if we come down, here it is also mentioned student. Here it is also mentioned that MTPs are considered relatively safe. Here it is mentioned it is relatively safe during the first trimester up to 12 weeks of pregnancy. Here it is mentioned. And here it is also mentioned that one disturbing trend observed is that a majority of MTPs are performed illegally by unqualified quacks, which are not only unsafe but could be fatal too. Here it is mentioned student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer student. It is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, among the 7 characters of P as studied by Mendel, the number of traits related to pod and seed respectively are option number 1 2 2, option number 2 3 2, option number 3 2 3, and option number 4 4 3. So which is the correct one? Now student, here we are talking about the out of the 7 characters studied by Mendel, the number of traits related to pod and seed. So pod, if we are talking about the pod, there will be the 2 characters, pod shape, taking pod shape and pod color. So 2 characters should be taken from pod. This is pod shape and pod color. And if we are talking about the seed, it is also having the 2 traits, that is seed shape and seed color. So 2 traits are taken from seed and 2 from the pod. And the reference of this question student comes from the NCERT page number 71. So here we come to the NCERT page number 71, where a contrasting traits studied by Mendel in P is given in a tabular form, and here it is mentioned, if we are talking about the characters of the pod, it is pod shape and pod color. And if you are talking about the seed, so seed shape and seed color, here it is mentioned. So 2 characters should be taken from pod and 2 from the seed. So here we find the correct answer, student, and the correct answer for this question, student, it is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, in 1953, S.L. Miller created primitive earth conditions in the laboratory and gave experimental evidence for origin of first form of life from pre-existing non-living organic molecules. The primitive earth conditions created include option number 1, low temperature, volcanic storms, atmosphere rich in oxygen. Option number 2, low temperature, volcanic storms reducing atmosphere. Option number 3, high temperature, volcanic storms non-reducing atmosphere. And option number 4, high temperature, volcanic storms reducing atmosphere containing CH4, NH3, etc. So which option here is the correct one? So student, here we are talking about in 1953, S.L. Miller created primitive earth conditions in the laboratory and he gave the experimental evidences for the origin of first form of life from pre-existing non-living organic molecule. The primitive earth conditions includes high temperature, volcanic storms, reducing atmosphere, containing methane, CH4, ammonia, NH3, etc. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 127. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 127, and here it is mentioned, student, that the conditions on earth were high temperature, volcanic storms reducing atmosphere containing CH4, NH3, etc. In 1953, S.L. Miller, an American scientist, created similar conditions in a laboratory scale. He created electric discharge in a closed flask containing CH4, hydrogen, NH3 and water vapor at 800 degree Celsius. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which kind of animal breeding is not correctly matched with its utility? Here the options are: option number 1, to combine characters of two different species interspecific hybridization; option number 2, to combine characters of two different breeds cross breeding; option number 3, to remove inbreeding depression outcrossing; and option number 4, to obtain pure lines outbreeding. So which option here is the correct one? Comes to the option number 1, interspecific hybridization. We know that, student, what is interspecific hybridization? We know that in this it is combine the characters of the two different related species. So it is interspecific hybridization, and that is the correct one. Option number 2, to combine characters of two different breeds, it is cross breeding. It is correct, student, that to combine the characters of two different breeds, the cross, it is called cross breeding. And to remove inbreeding depression, it is outcrossing. Yes, outcrossing is used to overcome the inbreeding depression, or to remove inbreeding depression. That is the correct one. But to obtain pure line, it is outbreeding. It is not outbreeding, student, it is inbreeding. It is inbreeding. And the reference of this question, student, comes from the NCERT page number 167 and 168. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 167, and here our topic inbreeding. Here our topic inbreeding. Inbreeding increases homozygosity. Thus, inbreeding is necessary if we want to evolve a pure line in any animal. Here it is mentioned. And if we come to the next page, that is page number 168, we are talking about interspecific hybridization. Here it is mentioned, in this method, male and female animals of two different related species are mated. Here it is mentioned. And if you are talking about the cross breeding, student, cross breeding, here it is mentioned, in this method, superior males of one breed are mated with superior females of another breed. And cross breeding allows the desirable qualities of two different breeds to be combined. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 4. Thank you.
Let's see our next question. Match the following. So pectinases, if we talk about pectinases, they are clarifying agents used in juice industries. So let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number, here we can see 183. So here we can see, so here are we being given with that bottled fruit juices bought from the market are clearer as compared to those made at home. This is because the bottled juices are clarified by the use of pectinases and proteases. Let's go back to our question. Streptokinases, so they are clot busters. Clot busters. Let's go back to our NCERT, and here we can say streptokinase. So produced by the bacterium Streptococcus and modified by genetic engineering, is used as a clot buster for removing clots from the blood vessels of patients who have undergone myocardial infarction leading to heart attack. Let's go back to our question. Cyclosporin A, so that is immunosuppressive agent. Cyclosporin A, if we talk about, that is used as an immunosuppressive agent in organ transplant patients, is produced by the fungus Trichoderma polysporum. Let's go back to our question. And statin, which is actually blood cholesterol lowering agents. So here we can see that statins produced by the yeast Moniscus purpureus have been commercialized as blood cholesterol lowering agents. It acts by competitively inhibiting the enzyme responsible for synthesis of cholesterol. Let's go back to our question. So the correct sequence is 4, 3, 2, 1, and that has been given in option number first. So the correct answer for this question is option number 1. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, Which of the following is a correct sequence of steps in a PCR polymerase chain reaction? Here the options are, student, option number 1 annealing, denaturation, extension. Option number 2 denaturation, annealing, extension. Option number 3 denaturation, extension, annealing. And option number 4 extension, denaturation, annealing. So which option here is the correct one if you are talking about the polymerase chain reaction or PCR, polymerase chain reaction, or we are talking about PCR, students? The correct sequence of steps in PCR are as follows. First is denaturation, second step it is annealing, third steps it is extension. So denaturation, then annealing, and then extension. And the reference of this question, student, it comes from the NCERT page number 202. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 202, and here it is mentioned that if you are talking about this step, the first step it is the denaturation, then the annealing, and then the extension in PCR, polymerase chain reaction. We are talking about polymerase chain reaction, PCR. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, what triggers activation of prototoxin to active toxin of Bacillus thuringiensis in bollworm? Option number 1 acidic pH of stomach, option number 2 body temperature, option number 3 moist surface of mid-gut, and option number 4 alkaline pH of gut. So which option here is the correct one? We know that, student, Bt toxin protein exist as inactive prototoxin but once an insect ingests the inactive toxin, it is converted into active toxin. It is converted into active form of toxin due to alkaline pH of gut. And the reference of this question, student, comes from the NCERT page number 208. So here we come to NCERT page number 208, and here it is mentioned the Bt toxin protein exists as inactive prototoxin, but once an insect ingests the inactive toxin, it is converted into an active form of toxin due to the alkaline pH of the gut. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer. It is option 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, Which one is incorrect? Here the options are: option number 1, Bt toxin gene has been cloned from the bacteria. Option 2, Bt toxin is coded by the gene named cry. Option 3, Bacillus thuringiensis forms protein crystal throughout their life cycle. And option number 4, Bt toxin protein exists as inactive prototoxin. So which option here is the correct one? Moves to the option 1. Bt toxin, we know that student, Bt toxin has been cloned and it is cloned from the bacteria. That means option 1 here is the correct one. Option 2, Bt toxin is coded, it is coded by the gene which is named as cry gene. So student, here option 2 is also being the correct one. Option 3, Bacillus thuringiensis form protein crystal throughout their life cycle. This option number 3 is incorrect, student, because we know that Bacillus thuringiensis forms protein crystal only during particular phase of their growth. That's why option number 3 is incorrect. Bt toxin protein exists as inactive prototoxin. This also being the correct one. And the reference of this question, student, comes from the NCERT page number 208. So here we come to NCERT page number 208, and here it is mentioned that B. thuringiensis forms protein crystal during a particular phase of their growth. Here it is mentioned, student, this crystals contain a toxic insecticidal protein, and here it is mentioned the Bt toxin protein exists as inactive prototoxin, but once an insect ingest the inactive toxin, it is converted into active form of toxin due to alkaline pH of the gut. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student, for this question. It is option number 3. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, the logistic population growth is expressed by the equation. Option number 1, dn upon dt is equal to rn. Option number 2, dn upon dt is equal to rn n minus k upon n. Option number 3, dt upon dn is equal to nr k minus n upon k. And option number 4, dn upon dt is equal to rn k minus n upon k. So which is the correct one? We know that, student, Verhulst per logistic growth can be described by following equation. It is dn upon dt. It is dn upon dt is equal to rn k minus n upon k. And the reference of this question comes, student, it comes from NCERT page number 231. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 231, and here our topic Verhulst per logistic growth, and is described by the following equation. And the equation here is dn upon dt is equal to rn k minus n upon k. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer. It is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, given below is the representation of the extent of global diversity of invertebrates. What groups the 4 portions A to D represent respectively? So student, a pie chart is given and it will represent the extent of global diversity of invertebrate and labeled as A, B, C, D. So we have to identify A, B, C, D, what it represent respectively. So here the options are option number 1, A insect, B molluscus, C crustaceans, D other animals groups. Option number 2, A insects, B crustaceans, C other animal groups, D molluscus. Option number 3, A crustaceans, B insects, C molluscus, D other animal groups. And option number 4, A molluscus, B other animal groups, C crustaceans, D insects. So which option here is the correct one? Now student, if we know the pie chart, here it is labeled as A, B, C, D, and it will represent what? We know that if we come to the question, A will represent, student, it will represent the insects, which is the major part. Major portion is constituted by the insects. And then B will represent, student, it will represent the molluscus. So I will write here B will represent the molluscus. C will represent, it will represent the crustaceans. It will represent the crustaceans, student, crustaceans. And D will represent, it will represent the other animal group. It will represent the other animal groups. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 260. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 260, and here our chart which asks in the question, that is the invertebrates. We are talking about the invertebrates. A will represent, student, it will represent the insects. B will represent, it will represent the molluscus. C will represent the crustaceans, and D will represent other animal groups. So here is the correct one. So comes to the question side, student, for the correct answer, and here A is insect, it is in 1 and 2. B is molluscus, so B is molluscus in 1. C is crustacean, and D is other animal groups. So student, here we find the correct answer. It is option number 1. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, Polyblend, a fine powder of recycled modified plastic, has proved to be a good material for option number 1, use as a fertilizer, option number 2, construction of roads, option number 3, making tubes and pipes, and option number 4, making plastic sacks. So which option here is the correct one? We know that, a student, polyblend, a fine powder, polyblend, a fine powder, a fine powder of recycled modified plastic, of recycled modified plastic was developed by Ahmad Khan and his company it is this fine powder is mixed with bitumen and is used in construction of roads. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 279. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 279, and here it is mentioned that here it is mentioned, about 8 years ago, he realized the plastic waste was a real problem. Polyblend, a fine powder of recycled modified plastic, was developed then by his company. This mixture is mixed with the bitumen that is used to lay roads. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 2. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which statement is incorrect about pleurobrachia? Option number 1, they are diploblastic. Option number 2, they have tissue level of organization. Option number 3, they have complex. Option number 4, they show asexual and sexual reproduction. So which option here is the correct one? We know that student, if we are talking about the pleurobrachia, we know that student, it belongs to phylum Ctenophora. So student, it belongs to phylum Ctenophora. Phylum Ctenophora, and we are talking about pleurobrachia, and we know that student, the pleurobrachia having diploblastic, it is diploblastic, having tissue level of organization, tissue level of body organization, body bears external 8 rows of ciliated comb plates. Reproduction only by sexual means. Reproduction only by sexual means. So student, come to the options. They are diploblastic, correct. They have tissue level of organization, correct. They have 8 external rows of ciliated comb plates. This is also being correct one. They show asexual and sexual reproduction. We know that in it the reproduction is only by sexual means. That's why option number 4 is incorrect, student. And the reference of this question, student, it comes from NCERT page number. It comes from NCERT page number 51. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 51, and here our topic phylum Ctenophora, and student, here it is mentioned, it is diploblastic organism with tissue level of organization. The body bears 8 external rows of ciliated comb plates which help in locomotion, and reproduction takes place only by sexual means. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 4. Thank you.
Let's move on to our next question. Which of the following characteristic is incorrect with respect to cockroach? So a ring of gastric ceca is present at the junction of midgut and hindgut. No, this is wrong. It is present at the junction of foregut and midgut, given on page number 113, anatomy of cockroach, and here we can see that a ring of 6 to 8 blind tubules called hepatic or gastric ceca is present at the junction of foregut and midgut, which secrete digestive juice. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 1. Thank you. Our next question is, crypts of Libercoon are found in large intestine. No, they are present in small intestine. In the ragi of stomach, at the tip of villi in small intestine. No, at the base of villi in small intestine. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 260, that mucosa also forms glands in the stomach, gastric glands, and crypts in between the bases of villi in the intestine, crypts of Libercoon. So all the 4 layers show modifications in different parts of the alimentary canal. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 4. Thank you. Our next question is, match the following columns and select the correct option from the codes given below. So pneumotaxic center is located in the pons region of brain. So second is the correct match. Oxygen dissociation curve, that is hemoglobin, yes. Carbonic anhydrase, that is related to RBC. And primary site of exchange of gases is alveolar. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 275 first of all. So here we can see that RBCs contain a very high concentration of the enzyme carbonic anhydrase and minute quantities of the same is present in the plasma too. Here we can see regulation of respiration. So in this we can see that pneumotaxic center. So that is located in the pons region of the brain. And if we talk about oxygen dissociation curve, so here we can see that hemoglobin is a red colored iron containing pigment present in the RBCs. Oxygen can bind with hemoglobin in a reversible manner to form oxyhemoglobin. So this is the dissociation curve which is present due to hemoglobin binding capacity. Let's go back to our question. So the correct sequence is second, third, fourth one. Second, third, fourth one given in option number 2. So the correct answer for this question is option number 2. Thank you. Let's move on to our next question. First cardiac sound lub is associated with closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves. Yes, exactly. So let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 285 that a machine that is known as electrocardiograph is used to obtain an electrocardiogram. ECG is a graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart during a cardiac cycle. So here we can see that the first heart sound, that is lub, is associated with the closure of the tricuspid and bicuspid valves, whereas the second heart sound, that is dub, is associated with the closure of the semilunar valves. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 1. Thank you. Let's move on to our next question. Medullary gradient, that is difference in the medulla, is mainly developed due to two compounds, that is NaCl and urea. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 296 that the proximity between the Henle's loop and vasa recta as well as the counter current in them help in maintaining an increasing osmolarity towards the inner medullary interstitium, that is from 300 in the cortex to about 1200 in the inner medulla. This gradient is mainly caused by NaCl and urea. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 1. Thank you. Let's move on to our next question. The reflex pathway comprises at least 2 afferent neurons. No. At least 1 afferent neuron and 1 efferent neuron. Yes, exactly. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 322 that the reflex pathway comprises at least 1 afferent neuron receptor and 1 efferent, that is effector or exciter neuron, appropriately arranged in a series. Going back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 2. Thank you. Coming on to our next question, which of the following hormones is mismatched with the stated functions? ACTH stimulates the adrenal cortex. Yes, exactly. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 333. So here we can see ACTH, that is adrenocorticotropic hormone. Going back to our question, oxytocin stimulates water reabsorption by the kidneys. No. So what is the function of oxytocin, which is actually released by posterior pituitary gland? So what is the function of this oxytocin? That is, it acts on the smooth muscles of our body and stimulates their contraction. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 2. Thank you. Let's see our next question. The first sign of growing fetus may be noticed by listening to the heart sound carefully through the stethoscope. Yes, Exactly. Let's go to our NCERT, and here we can see on page number 54 that the first sign of growing fetus may be noticed by listening to the heart sound carefully through the stethoscope. Going back to our question, so the correct answer for this question is option number 1. Thank you. Coming on to our next question, artificial insemination means introduction of sperms of a healthy donor directly into the ovary. No. Transfer of sperms of a healthy donor to a test tube containing ova. Transfer of sperms of husband to a test tube containing ova. No. Artificial introduction of sperms of a healthy donor into the vagina. Yes, exactly. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 64, that what is artificial insemination? That is the semen collected either from the husband or a healthy donor is artificially introduced either into the vagina or into the uterus. That is intrauterine insemination of the female. Going back to our question, so the correct answer for this question is option number 4. Thank you. Our next question is, what happens in the tailing process of transcription? So that is polyadenylation at 3' end of RNA. So adenylate residues up to 200 are added at 3' end of RNA in this process of tailing. Let's go to our NCERT and see this on page number 111, that in tailing adenylate residues up to 200 to 300 are added at 3' end in a template independent manner. Let's go back to our question. So the correct answer for this question is option number 2. Thank you. Let's see our next question. A person suffering from a disease caused by plasmodium. That means we are talking about here malaria. Experiences recurring chill and fever at the time when it occurs when, given on page number 147, that the parasites initially multiply within the liver cells and then attack the red blood cells, resulting in their rupture. The rupture of RBCs is associated with the release of a toxic substance, that is hemozoin, which is responsible for the chill and high fever recurring every 3 to 4 days. Let's go back to our question. The sporozoites released from RBCs? No. The trophozoites? No connection with trophozoites. The parasite, after its rapid multiplication inside RBCs, ruptures them and hemozoin is released. Then only recurring chill and fever occurs. So the correct answer for this question is option number 3. Thank you.
Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, among the following pairs of microbes, which pair has both the microbes that can be used as biofertilizers? Here the options are option number 1 Aspergillus and Cyanobacteria, option number 2 Aspergillus and Rhizopus, option number 3 Rhizobium and Rhizopus, and option number 4 Cyanobacteria and Rhizobium. So which is the correct one? Now student, here we are talking about the pair of the microbes which are used as biofertilizers. Biofertilizers. So it should include the cyanobacteria, which is also called blue-green algae, student. And another bacteria, it is pair of bacteria which involved as a biofertilizer, it is Rhizobium. And the reference of this question, student, comes from the NCERT page number 188. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 188, and here our topic biofertilizer. Here it is mentioned, student, that here it is mentioned that biofertilizers are organisms that enrich the nutrient quality of soils. The main sources of biofertilizers are bacteria, fungi, and cyanobacteria. You have studied about the nodules on the roots of leguminous plants formed by the symbiotic association of Rhizobium. This bacteria fix atmospheric nitrogen into organic form, which is used by the plant as nutrient. So student, here the correct answer for this question, student, it is option number 4. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, Which of the following statement is not correct? Here the options are: option number 1, in man, insulin is synthesized as a pro-insulin. Option number 2, the pro-insulin has an extra peptide called C-peptide. Option number 3, the functional insulin has A and B chains linked together by hydrogen bonds. And option number 4, genetically engineered insulin is produced in E. coli. So which option here is the correct one, student? So move to the option 1. We know that in man, insulin is synthesized as a pro-insulin. It is correct one. Option number 2, the pro-insulin has an extra peptide which is called the C-peptide, is also being the correct statement. Option 3, the functional insulin has A and B chains linked together by hydrogen bonds. It is incorrect, student, because we know that the functional insulin has A and B polypeptide chains linked by disulfide bridge, not by hydrogen bonds. That's why option 3 is incorrect. And option number 4, genetically engineered insulin, it is produced in E. coli, it is also being the correct one. And the reference of this question, student, comes from NCERT page number 211. So student, here we come to the NCERT page number 211, and here our topic, that is here it is mentioned. Now here it is mentioned, student, that insulin from an animal source though caused some patients to develop allergy or other types of reaction to the foreign protein. Insulin consists of two short polypeptide chains, chain A and chain B, that are linked together by disulfide bridges. Here it is mentioned. And here it is also mentioned, student, that in mammals, including humans, insulin is synthesized as a prohormone, which contains an extra stretch called the C-peptide. Here it is mentioned. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer, student. It is option number 3. Thank you. Now student, let us come to the next question. Here the question is, which one of the following statements given are correct about catalytic converter? Here the options are: option number 1, they are fit into automobiles for reducing emission of poisonous gases like NO2 and CO. Option number 2, they have an inexpensive metals like lead, mercury and rhodium as catalyst. Option number 3, as the exhaust emission passes through catalytic converter, nitric oxide is changed to nitrogen gas, carbon monoxide is oxidized to carbon dioxide, and unburnt hydrocarbon gets completely burnt into O2 and CO2. Option number 4, motor vehicles fit with catalytic converter should use leaded petrol because lead in the petrol activates the catalyst. So which option here is the correct one? Move to the option number 1. We know that catalytic converter are fitted in the automobile. What are the purpose behind this? The purpose behind this is for reducing the emission of the poisonous gases like NO2 and CO. That means option number 1 here is incorrect, because catalytic converter are used for reducing the poisonous gases like NO2 and CO, carbon monoxide. So option 1 is the correct one. They have used the expensive metals. Here it is mentioned lead, mercury, that are not the expensive metals. That is option 2 is incorrect. As the exhaust emission passes through catalytic converter, nitric oxide changes to nitrogen gas, carbon monoxide is oxidized to carbon dioxide, and unburnt hydrocarbon get completely burnt. Here it is mentioned that it is completely burnt. So that's why option number 3 here is incorrect, student. Option number 4, motor vehicles fit with catalytic converter should use leaded petrol. It doesn't use the leaded petrol. That's why option number 4 is also being the incorrect one. And the reference of this question comes, student, it comes from NCERT page number 272. So student, here we come to NCERT page number 272, and here our topic catalytic converter have expensive metals, namely platinum, palladium and rhodium, which is used as the catalyst, are fitted into automobiles for reducing emission of poisonous gases. Here it is mentioned. As the exhaust passes through catalytic converters, unburnt hydrocarbons are converted into carbon dioxide and water and carbon monoxide and nitric oxide and changed to carbon dioxide and nitrogen gas respectively. Motor vehicles equipped with catalytic converter should use unleaded petrol because lead in the petrol inactivates the catalyst. Here it is mentioned, student. So student, for the correct answer, back to the question, and here we find the correct answer. Student, it is option number 1. Thank you.